Hey guys, thanks so much for checking out my show. I really appreciate it. Please click to subscribe. I appreciate all the support. In this episode, I'm continuing to dig into the murder investigation involving Dr. Spencer Tepe and his wife Monique. Monique's ex-husband has been charged with murdering Monique and Spencer, a man named Dr. Michael Mckee. In this episode, I'm going to dive into some new information I've learned about what was going on in Dr. Mckee's life before the murders, also why additional charges have now been added on. I'm digging into all of it, all the latest in this episode of Brian Entin Investigates. So more details are emerging in the murder of dentist Spencer Tepe and his wife Monique Tepe in Columbus, Ohio. It's such a tragic case. I know so many of us have been invested in this since really the beginning, since they were found dead. We're learning more about the abusive relationship Monique had with her ex-husband, Dr. Michael Mckee, a surgeon. I'm going to have more on that in a minute because there's a lot of new details, and I also have my guest criminologist, Dr. Casey Jordan, who's going to join me to really unpack some of this. So that's coming up a little later in the episode. But Dr. Mckee has officially been indicted now in the murders. There was a grand jury, and there is now a 5-count indictment, and it includes 4 counts of aggravated murder and 1 count of aggravated burglary. So these are no longer just charges from police. There has now been a grand jury, and the prosecutor is officially now in charge of the case. Mckee will be extradited back to Ohio this week. He should be in court at the end of the week, so I'll keep you guys posted on that. According to the indictment, Mckee used a gun equipped with a muffler or suppressor. That's the way they described it, a muffler or suppressor, when investigators say he went into the couple's home and shot both Monique and Spencer. And the police chief says that shell casings found at the scene connect back to a gun found at Mckee's residence. Now, in terms of what was happening in Mckee's life leading up to the murders, there were professional issues that have now come out. There was a lawsuit filed in 2024 in Nevada when he was working for a surgical group there, and it accuses a physician's assistant at the practice of inserting a catheter incorrectly, and almost 9 inches of the catheter, according to the lawsuit, was left inside the patient's body. So Dr. Mckee was named in that lawsuit because he was responsible for training and supervising the physician's assistant, according to the lawsuit. And what's interesting is they apparently tried serving Mckee 9 times. When I say serving, you know, if you're sued, you get served with a lawsuit, they have to come and they have to serve you with the lawsuit in person. And they tried 9 times and could not find Dr. Mckee. They went to his address, no one ever came to the door. They went to his old surgical practice in Las Vegas, and there was a doctor there that said that Dr. Mckee just disappeared. So this is a little bit of insight into what may have been going on with Dr. Mckee before the murders. The police chief in Columbus, Ohio, said officially now that the murderers were an act of domestic violence. Monique's brother-in-law says she just had to get away from Mckee. Apparently within the family, this was a known thing, that she just had to get away from him. He said, myself and many others were well aware kind of the negative impact that he had on her and the abuse that he put her through, the torment, that's the word he used, the torment that he put her through. She was willing to do anything to get out of there. A friend of Monique said she would say she thought he would never leave her alone for the rest of her life. And remember, they had been divorced for 8 years, okay? The divorce happened 8 years ago. And we still don't know exactly what sparked him to 8 years later come and kill his ex-wife Monique and her new husband Spencer, who is a dentist, by the way. Something else I'm going to ask Dr. Jordan about in a minute. The couple's 2 children, a 4 and a 1-year-old, they were found unharmed in the house, which is just a heartbreaking part of all of this. Spencer's cousin Audrey Mackey says the 4-year-old recently said goodbye to her mommy and daddy. The children, they are now living with extended family. The couple's 1-year-old son, who family believes was likely the one crying because he couldn't get out of his crib. Remember when the coworkers and friends were showing up at the house for the wellness check, and they heard one of the kids crying inside, and the cousin says that was likely the 1-year-old. basically stuck in his crib because it's awful to say, but because his parents had been shot and killed in the house. But the family says the 1-year-old likely too young to really process his parents' deaths. According to family members, it's unfortunate because they will never get to know their parents. And the cousin said, quote, maybe the eldest one might hopefully remember her parents. It's very tragic. So again, I just think in all of this, I'm going to put the GoFundMe link below again. I've been trying to do that on all the videos that I do involving this case. But while we continue to go through the investigation, and obviously there's going to be a lot that comes out now that Dr. Mckee has been arrested, maybe he may end up going to trial. We'll have to wait and see. But while we continue to follow that, I just think it's important to remember that there are these kids left behind. I want to play you some of Monique, and this is before I get to my guest in a second, but I want to play you some of Monique and Spencer's wedding video. This is video actually shot by Monique's brother-in-law, and I had seen some clips of this and photos from it, but I actually found the full video and watched it well after I had started following and covering this case, and I wanted to play you guys a chunk of it because I was really, really moved by it. And I think it shows just how in love Monique and Spencer were, and these allegations that she went through this abusive marriage with Dr. Mckee, she was clearly very in love now and found the love of her life, and it really comes through.
One, I knew you were something special. I had quite a journey to get to you, countless bad bumble dates, wrong relationships, and waterfalls of tears. But it was worth every cringing second because it led me to you. Throughout all of this, I knew that God was guiding me to my person, and that when I met him, it would be the most magical thing ever. And boy, is that an understatement.
I'm joined now by Dr. Casey Jordan, a criminologist, host of the podcast Criminal Appeal. It's always nice to see you, Dr. Jordan. We've spoke about this case before. The first thing I want to ask you about is this new information that's come out that Dr. Mckee was using a silencer when he killed Monique and Spencer, according to police. What do you make of that?
You know, Brian, it shows a lot of foresight and planning. And that is an add-on that you do not need just to go to the shooting range for target practice. I mean, you get a silencer or a suppressor when you want to kill someone. And also, if you want to fire multiple shots, which also increases your risk of being hurt, you want to kill someone and not be hurt, maybe by the children or the baby down the hall or the dog who might start barking or the neighbors who might hear shots. So, I mean, the fact that you go to the trouble to have a silencer on your gun, very, very damning evidence. And it also might suggest that he anticipated that with the first shot, the other person in the room might awake and attack him. And so the silencer might buy him extra time. And by all accounts, from what we know about the crime scene, it looks like Monique was shot in the chest once. And possibly that was his first target. Spencer awoke because Spencer was shot a number of times. Perhaps Spencer was trying to fight back. But the silencer would have made it possible to get out of the house without people noticing.
Could it also play into premeditation because they've now made them aggravated murder charges? They've said premeditation. Could they use the silencer to try and prove that he went and bought a silencer?
Absolutely. I mean, that shows the planning and forethought. Nobody just accidentally goes into a gun shop and buys a silencer unless they plan to use it. And there is no logical reason to have one on your gun unless you plan to actually harm somebody with it and keep it quiet.
You and I talked last time about the shell casings that were found at the scene in the house, which you were saying were going to be very, very important. It turns out now the police chief says those shell casings have connected back to Dr. McKee's gun, which they found in his residence. Are you surprised that he kept the murder weapon like that? I mean, couldn't he have thrown it out of the car or thrown it in a lake? Or, you see that in other cases.
Could he have? Not only could he have, should have, except I'm glad. Listen, the short answer to your question, Brian, why would he still have the gun on him, is because he is an idiot. And I don't mean to be unkind, but, he is natively intelligent. He's smart enough to make it through medical school and become a surgeon. And yet with that comes a certain God complex we often talk about with surgeons, particularly. Don't beat me up, surgeons, but you know that many surgeons, because the work they do is the fine line very often between life and death, they fancy themselves incredibly intelligent, but with that comes a certain amount of arrogance. And in this particular case, I would think that even though he was highly intelligent, the arrogance got in the way and made him overconfident. And the overconfidence is like, they're not going to come for me. They're never going to think it's me. Why do I need to get rid of this gun? I like this gun. I paid for this gun. Why should I throw it in the lake? And, from the best laid plans, the most brilliant murder plans, you're going to make 10 mistakes at least. And keeping the gun was his most obvious one, and leaving DNA at the scene.
When I saw him in court, my first impression was he just looked like emotionless, but also kind of like he didn't have much fight left in him, if that makes any sense. Is there any chance, do you think, that he just has given up at this point, didn't care to hide the murder weapon because I'm probably going to get caught anyway, and let's just see how this plays out?
There had to be something, Brian, in his subconscious that made him very aware of the incredibly high risk of this crime that he perpetrated, because he's going to be an obvious suspect. Of course, we always look at the ex-husband anytime a wife is killed. And it's a bit of a tug of war in his reasoning, like in the little reasoning brain chamber he has. He's like, no one will ever suspect me. I'm a fine, upstanding vascular surgeon with no criminal history. And, that's the overconfidence. And it's at a tug of war with the logical fear and the assessment of risk, which you would think he would be good at. But in the end, he knew that the chances were very high that he would be questioned and even caught. And in the end, the overconfidence in the tug of war won out. And this is probably fed by the fact that we've learned a bit more about him that shows he was on a downward spiral at work. He had malpractice suits where he was named. His life was unraveling. He didn't have a happy marriage. He didn't have beautiful children. He didn't have a lovely golden doodle. And I think that in his effort to scapegoat his misery and his depression, he focused on his ex-wife. And it could have been anybody in the scapegoat world, but Monique was an easy target because she was so happy and living such a different life with her new husband than she ever had with him. So, the bottom line is, did he think he was going to get caught? Not consciously, but subconsciously. He had to know that it was extremely likely and that he would be the number one suspect. And I think to a certain extent, maybe he didn't care.
Do you think this came out of nowhere after 8 years, or do you think they had some kind of communication and saw each other? Because, like you mentioned, we've learned more, and there are friends now of hers who have come forward and said that she still feared him. She still thought about him.
We will probably find that out through a big, deep dive on their digital media. If he had made phone calls to her or texted her or emailed her, that will surface. It's too early in the game to know. But to the extent that she's watching his social media, which she probably does because she lives in fear of him, she wants to know where he is and what he's doing and if he's happy, what's going on at work, because she's afraid if he goes off the deep end, he might come for her, as her friends have confirmed. And the bottom line is he's watching her social media. And I know she can block him, but come on, there's 1,000 ways around that. They probably still had mutual friends in common, and he could check in with a friend who would show her, her Instagram and her beautiful, happy family and all that sort of thing. I'm sure he kept constant tabs on her and very likely even physically stalked her around the house or cased that house. This was planned. He didn't just jump in the car that night and decide to do it. He got the gun. He got the silencer. He drove down. There was a lot of forethought in this. So, the bottom line is we don't know if they communicated directly, but I can guarantee you she was never out of his mind. And so he was communicating with her in his mind and sowing the seeds of bitterness and resentment over her happiness.
When you say he may have stalked the house, how can they figure out if he did that? The investigators, will they be able to? I mean, I guess it's like I'm thinking about how I had to go through tolls or cameras or.
All of that, plus the surveillance cameras that are on the streets in that area, one of which picked up a figure in a back alley near the house, a block or two away, which by all accounts we think was probably him. It's not yet confirmed. But they will go through thousands of hours of video footage looking for any sign of his car or his person and presence to determine whether or not he had really come around and sat. One of the questions that people still ask is, how did he know the code, assuming he got in that way to their digital keypad? And there's ways you can do that. I mean, with a telephoto lens, you can just watch somebody walk in the front door and parked across the street and see what numbers they push. I mean, from my 2 cents, I suspect that the digital code, if Monique set it up when they renovated that house, was probably the same digital code that she had when she lived with her ex-husband, maybe her birthday or her zip code or something like that. And it seems like a Hail Mary pass to just show up and not know the code. But this is something that is still nagging on all of us. How did he get into that house?
Yeah, no forced entry. We still don't know. I've heard a couple of theories too about whether the kids may have been locked in a room, or whether he may have locked the door to where he killed Monique, allegedly killed Monique and Spencer, maybe to keep the 4-year-old out. So we're still trying to get the police haven't released very much officially, but we do know there was a grand jury and there's now 4 counts of aggravated murder. Do you know why 4? Because you would think like two, because two victims.
Okay, 2 murders, but 2 different, what we call the corpus delicti, which means the combination of criminal intent, criminal act, and concurrence. Now, just follow me here. He broke into this house or entered this house with the intent to commit a felony. Okay, that's the burglary. Doesn't have to be a larceny. The felony could be the murder. Now, they're expect that the defense attorney might say he came over to talk to Monique. He didn't plan to kill her, or he came in and he was going to steal stuff, but he wasn't going to kill anybody. And then somebody surprised him and he shot them. But he didn't plan to kill anybody. That was just ancillary to the burglary. There was no forethought. So that's one set of charges. And in a nutshell, Brian, they are trying to, it's a preemptive strike, a fail-safe, in case the most logical explanation, which is that he planned it, there was criminal intent, there was calculation and design, I think is the way that they phrase it in that particular jurisdiction. In case the jury doesn't believe that he calculated it and designed it, the intent to murder, they've got the burglary as a backup, because murdering in the commission of a burglary is a whole different set of murder charges. In other words, they could be found guilty of one set of those murder charges or even both.
Makes sense. You mentioned some of his professional issues. There's now this lawsuit that's come out of Nevada that he's involved in. Apparently, he was supervising a physician's assistant who left a pretty large catheter in someone. And the lawyer has come forward that was trying to sue Dr. Mckee, and said that he was having such a hard time finding him, that he tried serving him 9 times, that they went to his old place that he worked in Nevada, and they said that he just packed up and disappeared. And this was all before, in the years before the murders. Do you think that could have anything to do anything? I mean, is that important to the investigation?
Well, to me, it just supports the idea that this doctor's life was unraveling. And I'm sorry, toughen up, Buttercup. When you're a doctor, you're going to get sued. It's why you have malpractice insurance. But this is a man who seems to run from his problems instead of facing them head on. You've got insurance, let them deal with it. Mistakes do happen. Under the captain of the ship doctrine in law, in tort law, because he was in charge of the physician assistant who made the mistake, he is the guy who is liable and culpable. And he probably doesn't think that's fair, and he disagrees with the law and doesn't want to be sued. So, I mean, the fact that that the lawyers tried to serve him 9 times and he ducked out and managed to evade them every one of those times, it shows that he just is a man who shirks responsibility. He thinks he can run from his problems, that he can outrun his problems, that they won't catch up with him. Instead of just saying, all right, this is going to be tough, but I'm going to grab the bull by the horns and I'm just going to face it head on. And if that is his character, if that is his personality, to, blame everybody else and feel like he is the victim of a witch hunt, he will be looking for a scapegoat for his misery. And it's compounding. It's compounding daily. He has problems at work. His wife left him and divorced him and is having a wonderful, happy life with her new husband. Who knows what else was going on in his life? But in the end, he decided, we see this a lot. And you asked me earlier, do you think he meant he knew he would be caught? There's always this thing they don't want to be caught, but their life is going down the toilet, so to speak. And they decide that if it's going to be bad, they might as well find a scapegoat and take vengeance on this entity, in his case, Monique and her husband, who he wants to blame for all of his problems. And it's kind of like a last act on your way out of town. If he knows that his life is really kind of over, especially professionally, he may decide to do something incredibly rash, like kill his ex-wife and her husband, because whatever, he's going to go to prison. He doesn't really care. Life is over for him as he knows it. I wouldn't be surprised if there was a lot of bad stuff going on in his life when he committed this alleged crime.
Yeah, I'm just thinking about him as a doctor, spending so much time, apparently helping people, doing surgeries to help people. I mean, and you walk in, let's say you have the plan to go kill your ex-wife and her new husband, but you walk in and you realize that there's kids there. You must have known before, but then when you see them, like, how does that not make you change your mind?
Yeah. Uh, Compartmentalization in a nutshell. I'm sure he knew the children were there, and I'm sure that his plan was to not harm the children. I mean, even the most emboldened murderer will, unless they're a professional hitman, seriously, will have a soft spot. There's a rule: you don't kill children. It's just understood. And his beef was with his ex-wife, and by virtue of the fact that she had a brand new young, handsome dentist doctor husband, boy, did he feel replaced. And, she upgraded because she got a man who was loving and wonderful, the opposite of everything he was, apparently. So his beef was very compartmentalized. I hate my ex-wife and I hate the man who makes her happy. I want to destroy their marriage, but the children are ancillary to that. I don't kill children. The wonderful news is that the youngest is far too young to have a memory of this. And the extended family who are caring for them believe that they witness nothing, remember nothing. And the sad thing is they will never remember their parents.
Yeah, it's sad to think about because they're so young. That's definitely the part that gets at me just thinking about them. What do you think, just based on what we know so far, he'll do moving forward? I mean, is he going to drag this out? Is he going to fight these charges?
They always start that way. And, we have a saying in criminology, especially if you do criminal defense work like I do, and I've done murder trials. Brian, there is no atheist in a foxhole, which means they always are strong until the last minute. And then they are like, yeah, I can't do this. This isn't worth it. This is, finally, the overconfidence will disintegrate and the rule of logic will take over, and it will basically, like, you're going down. Do you really want the spectacle of a trial and a media circus following this case forever? Do you really want the world to know all the details and hate you forever? Or do you just want to go quietly into the darkness? Koberger, he stayed until the very end after they lost all their motions. He was like, all right, I think I'll take a plea deal now. And I think you'll see exactly the same kind of thing happen with Monique's ex-husband. I think that he's going to toe the line until the very edge. And when he realizes that the evidence is overwhelming, he's going to take a plea.
Well, and like with Koberger, it's hard at this point to imagine like what a defense would be. I mean, if they've connected him to the gun, they probably have DNA now. You know what I mean? It's hard to imagine what his defense could be.
He can't get rid of the gun with a silencer. Okay, the DNA puts him there, but he could come up with all kinds of ridiculous scenarios of why he was there. She called him there, they came to have a discussion, whatever. I mean, we just saw in the Walsh case in Boston. I mean, people come up with crazy scenarios all the time that try to give them an exit plan. He could come up with a scenario of why he was there, but not why he was there with a gun that was armed with a silencer. There is not a logical juror who will go, you went there to chat with her and ended up killing her by accident? Come on. So I don't know what his plan is. He can try for mistaken identity, but DNA is the nail in the coffin there. So between the gun and the DNA, I don't see how he's going to beat this rap. And the overconfident guy, in the tug of war is going, I'm going to take it to the very edge. And he will. But I think at some point logic will step in and you will see a plea deal.
What kind of a profile do you see with him in terms of personality? Like, is he just such an egomaniac that he thought he could get away with this?
Well, I've been describing him as overly confident. So we could call him egomaniac, megalomaniac. I mean, I have not seen or heard a word from this person in person, so we don't diagnose. But I mean, clearly there's a lot of antisocial personality traits going on here. And I hate to make mass generalizations about doctors and surgeons, but there's been a lot of literature on their personality traits. And, arrogance and narcissism is very common among physicians, and it's born from the fact that they do hold the fine line between life and death in their hands. But surgeons particularly, they're not so much in the healing practice as in the cutting practice. And they make mistakes. They do get sued. I think that he is absolutely blown away that he has a malpractice suit on himself this early in the career. But, when it comes down to his personality, I hate to say it's so common. It is common across the board, especially with serial killers. But this is just a one-time thing for him. And it's power and control. When he feels that his life is spinning out of control, and doctors are all about extreme discipline and extreme control. That is how you become a surgeon, a physician, by studying hard, putting your nose to the grindstone, excluding all else in the interest of your profession. And then when you arrive, you have a personality, not just a profession, which is paramount with power and control. When you feel your life slipping away, perhaps because of the malpractice lawsuit, perhaps because his wife dumped him, who knows, maybe he was in financial ruin. He may have all kinds of things going on that we don't even know about, dumped by a girlfriend, lost money gambling, who knows? But when we find power control oriented killers losing their sense of control, that's when they do completely uncharacteristic things, like perhaps take the life of their ex-wife. It's all alleged, innocent until proven guilty. But based on the evidence we have, he's good for it.
As always, I really appreciate Dr. Casey Jordan for talking with me. She always has such valuable insight as an attorney and criminologist. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. Again, I'll continue to cover the story every step of the way. Mckee is going to be in court, I believe, at the end of the week. That's when it's scheduled, when he's officially extradited back to Ohio and will face these murder charges in Ohio. So I'll keep you guys posted on how that hearing goes and any new details that come out. Please continue to click to subscribe on my videos. I appreciate all the support, and I'll talk to you guys later.